Another day, another story. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is a federal holiday in the United States, observed annually on the third Monday of January. It celebrates the life and achievements of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a civil rights leader who played a pivotal role in advancing racial equality and justice through nonviolent resistance. Key facts. Welcome to Tabo Eminent Channel. Origins. The holiday was signed into law in 1983 by President Ronald Reagan, though it was not observed in all states until 2000. Significance. It honors Dr. King's efforts to fight segregation, champion civil rights, and promote social justice, particularly his leadership in the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. Traditions. Many people observe the day with volunteer work, reflecting Dr. King's commitment to community service. Educational programs, parades, and speeches are held to honor his legacy. Cities and organizations often host events like marches, musical tributes, and discussions on civil rights and social justice. Notable speeches and moments. Drive. King's most famous speech, "I Have a Dream," delivered during the 1963 March on Washington, is often highlighted during celebrations. His leadership in events like the Montgomery bus boycott and the Selma to Montgomery marches also receive recognition. The legacy behind the holiday day is not just a day off work or school, it is a day of reflection, action, and education. The holiday honors Dr. King's tireless efforts to fight systemic racism, poverty, and injustice through his philosophy of nonviolent resistance. Born on January 15, 1929, Dr. King grew up in a segregated South where racial discrimination was entrenched in society. Despite the challenges, he rose to become one of the most influential leaders in American history. The fight for the holiday, the road to creating Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a federal holiday was not easy. After Dr. King's assassination in 1968, U.S. Representative John Conyers and Senator Edward Brooke introduced a bill to make King's birthday a national holiday. The campaign gained momentum over the years, with musicians like Stevie Wonder contributing, especially through the song, "Happy Birthday," written as a tribute to King. Despite significant public support, the bill faced opposition in Congress, with arguments ranging from cost concerns to resistance against honoring a single individual. Finally, in 1983, after decades of advocacy, President Ronald Reagan signed the holiday into law. The first nationwide observance took place on January 20, 1986. A day of service in 1994, President Bill Clinton signed legislation designating the holiday as a national day of service. The idea was to encourage Americans to honor Dr. King's legacy by volunteering in their communities. Today, the MLK Day of Service sees millions of people engage in activities like food drives, neighborhood cleanups, and mentoring programs. Why it matters today. Martin Luther King Jr. Day serves as a reminder of the ongoing struggle for equality and justice. While Dr. King's dream of a nation where individuals are judged by the content of their character has made significant strides, issues like racial discrimination, economic inequality, and voter suppression still persist. The day inspires reflection on these challenges and fosters a sense of collective responsibility to address them. Powerful words. Dr. King's speeches continue to resonate today. One of his most moving quotes, delivered during his "I Have a Dream" speech, encapsulates his vision. If you'd like, I can provide specific stories about his life, such as the Montgomery bus boycott, the Selma marches, or his final days before his assassination in 1968. Here's a deeper dive into some of the pivotal moments and stories in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life and legacy, showcasing why his impact continues to inspire people worldwide. The Montgomery bus boycott, 1955-1956, Drive. King emerged as a national leader during the Montgomery bus boycott, a pivotal event in the civil rights movement. The boycott began after Rosa Parks, an African-American seamstress, refused to give up her bus seat to a white man. This act of defiance led to her arrest, sparking outrage in the black community. Dr. King, then a 26-year-old pastor at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, was chosen to lead the Montgomery Improvement Association, which organized the boycott. For over a year, African Americans in Montgomery refused to use city buses, despite facing harassment, threats, and economic hardship. The boycott ended in victory when the Supreme Court ruled that segregation on public buses was unconstitutional. The letter from Birmingham Jail, 1963. In April 1963, Dr. King was arrested during a nonviolent protest in Birmingham, Alabama, a city infamous for its deep-seated racism. While in jail, he penned the now famous letter from Birmingham Jail, addressing criticism from white clergy who labeled the protests as unwise and untimely. In the letter, Dr. King articulated the moral imperative for civil disobedience, writing, "The letter became a powerful manifesto for the civil rights movement, highlighting the urgency of challenging injustice." The March on Washington, 1963. On August 28, 1963, over 250,000 people gathered in Washington, D.C., for the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. The event, one of the largest civil rights rallies in U.S. history, aimed to draw attention to racial inequality and economic injustice. Dr. King delivered his iconic, "I Have a Dream" speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. His vision of a future where all people would live in harmony, regardless of race, galvanized the nation. This speech remains a cornerstone of his legacy. The Selma to Montgomery Marches, 1965. Dr. King played a key role in organizing the Selma to Montgomery marches, which were critical in the fight for voting rights. The first march, known as Bloody Sunday, took place on March 7, 1965, when peaceful protesters were brutally attacked by police as they tried to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge. The violent images shocked the nation, leading to increased support for the movement. A subsequent march, led by Dr. King, successfully reached Montgomery, and the Voting Rights Act was signed into law later that year, prohibiting racial discrimination in voting. His final days on the mountaintop speech on April 3, 1968, Dr. King gave his final speech in Memphis, Tennessee, where he had come to support striking sanitation workers. Known as the "I've been to the mountaintop" speech, it carried an eerie sense of forewarning. The following evening, Dr. King was assassinated on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. His death was a devastating blow to the civil rights movement but solidified his status as a martyr for justice. The legacy lives on. Dr. King's work transformed the social and political landscape of the United States. His leadership directly contributed to landmark legislation, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Globally, his philosophy of nonviolence has inspired movements for justice and equality, from South Africa to India. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel.